Close and secure all possible entrances to your home. Switch off all lights. Do not look out of any windows. Do not respond to any knocks on your windows or doors until the all clear is given. Remain silent at all times.
It's like, this dude's too cool for long sentences.
He said the key words. He said,
streaming live around the world, this is Paper Cuts
We call it a poop bag.
with Brad and Jay.
Yeah, it's got a new show.
It came to you like basically straight from my brain.
We're not going to have those devil books in here.
We are live.
For as late as we were, man, your hair's looking pretty good there, Brad.
Appreciate it. You like my buzz cut? Look, yours is looking fancy though, Jay. I like yours.
Mine always is, buddy. We
always looking smooth, aren't you?
Yeah, I do it. I try to clean it up for the show. Look, one of us has to. Come on.
I mean, I got a collar on today, so this is like super fancy
that is
for
true.
us.
I got fancy lighting to cover up the gray. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Paper Cuts. I'm Jay. That's Brad. Enough about us. We have a special guest tonight, the writer of Criterium, Dark Side of the Room, and Almost Ruth. A few other things we're going to talk about too. It's been a busy day for you today. Tyler Jones, everyone. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Paper Cuts.
What's going on, Tyler?
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me.
I think you're the first person ever to wear a suit on our show, by the way.
He's fancy.
It's not a suit, Jay.
Well, it would be for me.
That's any amount of clothing is fancy
on.
for Jay.
You have a tie. You have a tie. I should wear a tie with a t-shirt.
Yeah. It's a waistcoat.
There you
Okay.
Technical term there, Jay.
Where's your tux, Brad? I thought you had to wear a tux.
It's down there zipped up in a bag. You don't want me to put that on.
No, we'll wait. Go for it.
Okay. All right. Hold on. I'll be right.
I mean, we already had to wait, for you to do your hair. So
Yeah, my 6-year-old is wearing one tomorrow too, and he put it. We had to go get fitted yesterday. He put it on. He's like, "Oh, this is tight." He was about to Hulk out and just shred it.
Go for it. Record it.
Record it. He was like, "I don't look like a gentleman. I look like a magician."
So what's going on, Tyler? What would you be normally doing if you weren't on the show with these two dumbasses here?
Right now, I'd be hanging out with my wife and kids, and who knows,
more
partying
important
with the
stuff
family
than this.
somehow.
Yeah, more important stuff.
More important stuff.
They're taking a break from you. They're like, "Yeah, go ahead and go do that show. We'll take a break from you."
Right.
Yeah. So, big announcement for you today, right?
Yeah.
The cover release of the reveal. Want to tell us a little bit about that before we hop into everything else?
Yeah, I've got a short story collection coming out next year, February 26th, through Cemetery Gates. It's called Burn the Plans, and it's a collection of 15 stories total, and there's the cover.
Look at that.
Done by the very, very talented David Mack, whose work you might recognize. He's done work on Neil Gaiman's American Gods,
Right.
Fight Club
Nice.
2 and 3, the graphic novels. He's done work on Daredevil, and he did the opening credits on Captain America, Winter Soldier.
That's
Really?
cool.
He's just
Nice.
he's got a really unique style, and he actually did the cover
picture
for
within
Criterium.
picture. Yeah, I love the picture within picture there, like within the actual handprint, the picture within that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a couple things going on there. So yeah, today was the official cover reveal / release date for the book, which is exciting. It's coming up.
Yeah.
I noticed one of them had different color fonts. So was one of them like the hardcover edition, one the paperback, or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with all the books that I just released in October, the Criterium and Dark Side of the Room extended editions, along with Enter Softly and Almost Ruth, all those hardcover editions have variant covers.
Yeah.
I just thought it'd be a cool idea. You see it a lot in comics. They'll release like a primary cover and then variants for collectors. And I just thought, if I'm going to do it in hardcover, might as well make it something unique, worth having.
Criterion is one of my favorite covers of last year. I do remember just going on and on about the flaming bike. I know it was an honor for you to have that book in one of my tops of the year, but that's a side that's a side note. But yeah, that cover was pretty nice. Why do the new extended versions? What was the whole plan ideal behind the extended versions of Dark Side of the Room, Criterium, and of course you have the extra novella along with Almost Ruth.
Yeah. What's up, Brennan, LJ, Chad? Thank you guys for joining us. So the extended editions, it started with the bonus novella to Criterium called Enter Softly. When you write a novella, you're trying to tell a pretty concise story. It doesn't have the scope of an. I just saw Chad's comment.
Chad.
Yeah.
I'm the butt of all the jokes. That's okay.
That's all right. It doesn't have the scope of a novel. You're trying to tell a pretty concise, straight story. And afterwards, another idea popped into my head, and I thought I wanted to write it, and it clearly took place in that world. And then I started thinking, well, if I released this, I don't know that it would have the same impact if I just released it on its own. It felt like it needed to be connected to Criterium in some way. And so I thought about re-releasing Criterium with this story attached. And then I had another idea for one connected to the Dark Side of the Room and wrote that one and was really happy with how it turned out. So I thought, well, if I'm going to put these out, let's make a thing of it. And I asked Jeremy Robert Johnson if he'd be willing to write an introduction for Criterium, and he did, and it's phenomenal. And then Philip Fracassi agreed to write one for the Dark Side of the Room as well. And I didn't expect it to be the like emotional honor that it was to have those guys, because I respect their work enormously, and to read what they wrote about something I'd written was just kind of overwhelming. Like I read over those intros more than once, just floored.
Yeah.
So it's an honor to have those included in the books. So that's why I re-released them. I just thought it didn't seem right to release those novellas on their own without the immediate connection to the original stories.
Yeah,
and
I
then
need to read those intros, because I know I read a couple of the intros. I think it was for Criterium. I need to reread those, because I'm supposed to do one eventually for someone, so I need to get an idea, a good idea of the proper way of doing it. So,
yeah, theirs are incredible.
Yeah,
and then I wrote a bonus novella for Almost Ruth as well, called Wake Up, and I just thought it'd be a shame to have those. I thought if people already had Criterium of the Dark Side of the Room, I would hate for them to feel like they had to repurchase those books just to get the new novellas. And so that's why I put together Enter Softly, this little volume. And it's a strange little book because it has 3 novellas in it that are all connected to other books.
Yeah.
But so it's for those people like you have the older version of Criterium, you know, so it's for someone like you could buy this and get all those stories. And the cover on this was done by a friend of mine named Ryan Mills.
I like that cover a lot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal. Yeah, really, really captures the tone and feel of it as well.
So with those novellas, did you set out specifically to write them to be connected, or were you starting this other story and saying, oh, maybe this could be connected to these other ones?
The Criterium one, I knew right away that one was connected. And then the one for the Dark Side of the Room, it popped into my head fully formed. The Dark Side of the Room, as you know, it opens up with a newspaper clip from the Oregonian newspaper mentioning that some of the homeless population had been murdered, decapitated. And the first thought that popped in my head was, who's the guy who gets called to investigate that crime scene?
Right.
Yeah.
And then from there, the story just seemed to like appear before me, and I wrote that one, and it's called Along the Shadow.
With the Dark Side of the Room, I finished this one the other day, and it did not go the way I was expecting at all. It's almost, kind of like a creature feature in a way.
Yeah.
And I was not expecting it to go that way, because it starts out with, like the mental horror and stuff. Like she's got dementia or Alzheimer's, she's sort of losing it. And then there's all I don't want to give too much away, but all the animal stuff, which I wasn't expecting. I really liked the way it went. It reminded me of, what's the Stephen King movie where they're like in the basement, cleaning out the basement kind of thing? The night shift.
Yeah. Night Shift.
It gave me vibes of the Night Shift a lot.
Awesome. That's so cool, man. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, the rats.
Yeah.
And then you don't know, like I said, I don't want to give too much away, but you don't know if they're real or if they're selling her head and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That one was fun to write. And after Criterium, I had spent so much time like in the emotional landscape of things. And when I started The Dark Side of the Room, that's still sort of where my head was at. And
Right.
then as I was writing it, and the whole final act became clear, I just thought, man, we got to go pedal to the metal here.
Yeah.
Like
It
just
totally
go all
took a
out.
shift in a great way that I thought. I love all the
Cool.
animal horror, the creature feature kind of stuff.
Awesome.
That seems
man.
to be
I'm
your
so glad to
style
hear
that I've read so far from you, emotional horror.
Mhm.
Is that something you set out for? Or did you just kind of just work yourself into it? It just came that way.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean, you just sit down like, I'm going to write the biggest emotional horror
Let's break your
story
heart.
ever. It just happened, right? Or you do have a heart.
Yeah, man. It's funny you ask that because, okay, before Criterium came out, I knew I read all genres, all different styles. I don't just read horror, but that's where my heart is. That's what I love to read and love to write. It's where my interest is. So I just thought there's horror. I didn't know all these terms like grief horror and addiction horror and emotional horror. I just thought it's horror.
Oh, there's a million of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess I just never put much thought into what genre or subgenre things fell into because I love it. I mean, Stephen King, I'm using him as an example because we've probably all read a lot of his work. Like you think of the scope of what he's written, like you've got Misery, but then you've got The Shining and you've got Gerald's Game, and they're all very, very different, but they're all horror. Like I'd never seen those categorized in subgenres before.
Right.
So when I started hearing people refer to Criterium or The Dark Side of the Room as emotional horror or addiction horror, things like grief horror was one that came up a lot. It was never my intention to fall into any category. It just happened. Yeah, I get kind of caught up in the characters when I write. And I figure if we're going to go places, whether it's emotionally or in, like you were talking about The Dark Side of the Room, if we're going to go places that are violent or emotional, like let's go there. Let's actually explore it and do it for real. Let's not dance around the issues. And so when it comes to those real life things, yeah, man, I dig in for sure and get kind of caught up in what these characters might be experiencing and feeling and going through. And it's just cool that for a reader it comes across that way. So I'm fine with whatever tag someone wants to put on it, but it's not.
So you feel like you're more character driven than when you're doing your stories. Just not so much the plot, but I mean you're focused so much on the characters and their feelings, their emotions. Everything else just kind of falls into place.
Yeah. I'm really concept driven. It has to have a good idea. Like if you look at the back of or the description on Amazon of my books, they're just a couple sentences because I want to give an idea of what the concept is, and hopefully that's intriguing enough. But I don't like descriptions that go on and on and on and tell you like all these
everything
plot points. Yeah, because you're like, okay, well that's the first quarter of the book, clearly.
Right. There's some that are long. I'm like, I try not to read the long ones. You know, I just
it's
want
like all the
Yeah.
big pub ones that are on the side of the hardback. It's like 14 paragraphs telling you the whole outline of the book.
Yeah, and some of them give away points that I'd rather not know.
Yeah.
But so I am. The concept is what has to interest me first. I have to get really into that. It's got to be something either weird, strange, creepy. Something's got to be going on for me to invest my time as a reader and as a writer. So once we're in there in the concept, and then I start writing the characters and whatever's going on in their life, I feel this responsibility in what I'm doing. If I'm going to describe someone mourning the death of his dad, I need to do it in a way that feels real. I can't avoid all the hard feelings that character may be going through. If he's addicted to pills, how does that feel for his mom? You know, what kind of guilt is he experiencing? Like I really need to dig into it for me, because otherwise I feel like I'm just wasting my time writing the story unless I just tear back all the skin and muscle and blood and get down to the bone of the issue.
Right.
So that's just, I don't know any other way to do it.
So since you're so character driven, do you ever just out in regular life, do you ever find yourself just kind of observing people, getting feelings and ideals for your next character, maybe? Or is that just me? Is that totally weird?
It's weird. Yeah.
Okay,
You are
I
weird,
figured,
Jay.
I figured it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
I figured it was. Yeah.
I not consciously. No,
Okay.
I'm never sitting with someone like I've talked about this before, but I work in healthcare. So
Okay.
I get to meet a lot of different people a lot of those people, it's the worst day of their life.
Mhm.
They're in the hospital because they're injured or sick or scared or someone they love is. So when I'm sitting with people, I'm constantly observing and recording things they say, how they say them, but I'm not thinking I'm going to use that. But I'm just thinking, gosh, okay, so this is it's a weird thing. Like if you're sitting with someone who's just lost a loved one, grief, that immediate raw pain doesn't look like what it does in a movie.
Right.
You know, and it's interesting the process that people will go through, and you can watch it on their face. You can watch, 18 different emotions cross over their face as they're trying to control it and process it.
Right.
And those are the kinds of things that I observe. Like, okay, this even in sometimes in tense situations, like in the hospital when when a patient's coding, which means they're dying.
Yeah.
And the whole team descends upon the room. I think a lot of people would probably be surprised how much joking goes on, how not intense it feels at the moment, because you've got all these people focused on this really monumental task, and you can't stop and think about what it all means. Like what if we fail?
Yeah.
So some of the defense mechanism starts coming out, and you hear people like, oh, so how was golfing on Saturday? As someone's doing chest compressions on a guy trying to keep his heart going. And to someone on the outside that might look cold, but once years being in that environment, you realize it's just a defense, because what's the alternative? This guy's dying. I just broke his ribs so that I can compress his heart. I could pump it manually, and his family's right outside the door bawling their eyes out. So
you
those
just melt down
things,
if you don't have that release of that sort of joke and stuff.
Yeah. And it's not, I mean, you do have to shut off a little bit. So those kinds of moments I observe because they feel real and they feel different than what you'd see on TV.
And it's not like you're standing there, okay, I'm going to use this as character, but like you said, it has an effect on you, maybe subconsciously later on in life. If you're writing a character, it may just be there. The observations that you saw,
the
may just come
experiences
out.
and stuff.
Yeah, the experiences may just come out automatically in one of your characters, without even thinking about it at all. Are you a doctor?
No.
Okay, I was
No.
just wondering. Okay.
I don't like
He dresses fancy like a doctor.
I was getting at. So.
You need a prescription, Jay?
we could talk backstage a little bit.
Yeah.
But we were talking about you do like to do character driven stuff, and if you're really in-depth characters, and then that is what drives the story forward. You don't have to have this big intricate crazy plot. The characters and their emotions or whatever they're going through, that's what's going to drive the plot forward. And so I feel like Dark Side of the Room was like that. I'm almost done with Almost Ruth, and that's definitely like that as well.
How far did you get?
I only have 3 or 4 chapters left. I'm like chapter 23, 24, something like that.
Okay.
So I'm near the end.
Wow.
So you'd be really mad if I just gave away the ending.
Probably.
Okay,
I'll come through
I won't do that.
Almost
I'd be
Ruth
mad,
has,
Jay.
I wouldn't do that to Tyler. I would just probably send you a message.
Yeah, ruin it privately, man.
Yeah.
whatever.
Don't drag me into this.
The grief in Almost Ruth is palpable. Like there's one scene that actually made me tear up and cry a little bit. And I won't say what it is or anything, but that felt so realistic. Like you're talking about, you kind of deal with those experiences at work and in your real life. It felt so real and raw and just gritty. Like that's probably one of the most, I don't know, well-written experiences of grief of someone losing a loved one that I've read in a book. I'm sure you know what scene I'm talking about.
I do. Yeah. That's
Jay, you read it as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, just to see that scene, how it plays out. Like, and I know everybody does this, but I'm making a movie in my head when I'm reading. So I'm just imagining like a rocking chair and someone just kind of, I don't want to give away too much because I mean, you guys got to read it yourself, but
Yeah.
just how long the process takes, and for the other person to watch it happen, you know, it was rough a few times to get through some of those parts.
Like that immediate, like after, like when they realized what was going on, that was just like heartbreaking.
Yeah. What,
Yeah. Well,
so
that's-
writing something like that,
well.
like what, like how does that affect you getting that deep into the plot and the story, the where it was going? I mean, do you ever write a chapter and walk away from it for a while because you got pretty emotionally involved with it, or does it? You've done it so much now, it just brushes off.
No, it gets to me. Yeah, for sure. I don't think obviously I'm not the only one, but if I'm able to write something like that and it can affect you across the country in such a way that it I think that we all bring our own experiences and feelings and fears to whatever art it is. And if I'm honest enough, then hopefully a reader will recognize that honesty and feel something as well.
Right.
So yeah, I do feel it absolutely. Because I'm tapping into my own stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's that story in particular. That's yeah. I think. I mean, I can't talk about it too in detail without giving things away, but
Right.
Yeah, definitely don't want to ruin that one for anybody.
yeah, but it's so weird, man. I wrote that book, and those scenes, they meant a lot to me as well. They seemed to say something that I needed to get out in some way, and they came out in this form of a story. And looking back on it, like I sent it to a few beta readers before putting it out, and with every email that I sent a beta reader, I gave them this caveat saying, I have no idea what this is. I really don't. I don't know. I don't know how to classify it. I don't know how to describe it. I have no idea. And it wasn't until the book was actually out and someone asked me about it that I realized it's the story of a marriage. That's what it is.
Yeah.
At its core. And I couldn't see that real clearly, but I think that marriage is a really unique relationship, and there's no other relationship quite like it. And in order for it to be everything that it can be, we have to let go of this version of ourselves that we want to project to another person, and we have to allow ourselves to be completely vulnerable. Completely, like here are all my flaws, all my failures. If you still choose to love me in spite of those, I will love you in return. But we can't put up these fronts and say that we're right when we're wrong. You know, we can't act like we're stronger than we are. We have to admit our weaknesses in order to really allow that relationship to become something that will last a lifetime. And maybe that's what that whole book is about. I don't know.
I was going to say
It's not for me to decide.
The way you're pitching it right now, it almost seems like a book that, you know, a marriage counselor could give to a couple. You know, the way you're pitching it is like, hey, read this, everything will be fine.
Yeah.
This is how it's supposed to be.
But
wow.
Isn't it funny though? Like, that's how I describe it, but I don't know that someone else would describe it that way. You know?
Yeah.
I wasn't
thinking of it that way until you said it. I was like, yeah, it actually is like that.
I mean, the listeners are like, wow, he just got deep. Like, they're taking notes now. They're like going to go home and well, a lot of guys are like, oh gosh, my wife's going to talk to me now. We're going to have the talks, you know?
Yeah.
And, why can't you love me the way Abel loves Ruth? See what you
we
started?
should all aspire to that.
Yes.
And like in the scene, like I was sad for what's going on with the characters, but I think what made me even more sad was putting myself in their place and like how I would react and what that would do to me. So I was connecting with them, even though I haven't experienced that myself, but I still had that sort of connection, like wondering, like, what would I do? How would I react to that as well?
Yeah. I think my favorite writing gives me the space I think a lot of writing, a lot of art maybe has to have some negative space in it for a reader or a viewer, whatever art it is, to insert themselves, to see themselves in it. So you can't, like, you have to give them room. And the same is
Yeah.
true as a writer as well. I think that I have to see, I have to imagine these things. A lot of what I do is put myself in a character's shoes and imagine what it would feel like. And I do that in life as well. Like in my job, I'm constantly, I have a lot of compassion for people in all walks of life, in all circumstances. I mean, even the guy who has ruined his body with drugs and alcohol and ends up in the hospital. I never look at someone like that and think, oh, you idiot. Like you did this to yourself. I wonder, man, what are you going through? Like, how did you end up here? There's a story there. And I find human beings endlessly fascinating and worthy of compassion as well. I don't think most people are beyond redemption.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do the same thing. It's putting myself in someone else's shoes and then seeing what path they're on and then projecting that path into the future. And that whatever that looks like is sort of inevitable based on the story.
And to go along with that, like allowing the reader or the viewer to put themselves in there. You don't over explain stuff. Like you don't give every single detail about everything, because then that doesn't give the reader any room to insert themselves or use their own imagination. If everything is explained, you do just enough to set it up, and then if they want to, they can sort of insert themselves, sort of like I did, into that scene.
Yeah. And I tend to think of it in two layers. Layer number one would be the story itself. Like, let's take Criterium, for example. The layer number one would be the situation of it all. You've got a kid mourning the death of his father, and he has an addiction to pain meds, and he stumbles across a strange bike. So of course there's going to be some family drama in there. That's like layer number one. But then layer number two is the emotional landscape. And I think that for me, I prefer not to go over the top in detail on layer number one. I prefer to reserve that for layer number two, because I think the emotional landscape is universal. I think that if you can relate to those feelings, you can relate to those. I can, other people can as well. So those are the areas where I think let's deep dive there. The rest of it will leave some room, but as far as the emotional landscape goes, like, yeah, let's describe every hill and every valley there.
Yeah, I totally feel you doing that with like I said, almost Ruth, and some of the dark side of the room too, especially with was her name Betsy, with her emotional, just sort of landscape. Like she just kind of felt lost, didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Have you had anybody in your life with amnesia, or not amnesia, dementia and stuff that you sort of drew from, or is that just something you wanted for that character specifically? Because it felt raw. Because my wife's grandmother had dementia really bad, and so I didn't really know her too well, so I sort of felt that connection with Betsy as well, having to do, sort of losing it slowly. And I like the way it's described, the dark side of the room in her mind, sort of slowly creeping across, taking her memories and stuff.
Yeah,
that was an interesting way to describe it like that.
Yeah, that idea came to me. So yeah, in answer to your question, yeah, I've had some family members deal with that. Lost some family members who struggled with that up until the end. And then I've seen it also in the hospital as well.
Yeah.
And there's degrees of it, of course, and it tends to get worse over time. But it is a little unnerving to be in the room with someone who's not sure where they are, who you are, and what's going on. They're seeing something. There's an awareness that something is going on, but it's not the reality. And it's unnerving to, there was one patient, I remember he was talking about his little brother hiding under the bed and a broken toy all over the floor. And he was asking me not to step on the toy. And he was, in his memory, he was back in childhood.
Yeah, he was seeing that himself.
Yeah. which was it's a little unnerving and fascinating at the same time, because it's like these memories are real, but they're time traveling.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's where the idea of the room came from, is that there's this darkness, this shadow that's covering over certain memories, and others are left in the light, but
Mhm.
maybe what they're connected to is in the dark. So you
Yeah.
see it from the past, but don't realize that it's in the past because all those connections are in the dark now.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's the mind is a strange thing. You know, a neurologist once told me that we know less, that what we know about the brain is a fraction of what we don't know. That there's more
Uh-huh.
we don't know,
Yeah.
which is really fascinating to think of. You know, we have rovers on another planet in our solar system snapping crystal clear pictures, and yet the human mind remains mostly unmapped and
Yeah.
not understood.
And dementia, I think that's one of the scariest ways to go. Just losing your memories and not knowing who people
Oh,
are, what's
yeah.
going on. That would be absolutely terrifying. And even yourself, you wouldn't even know it, so you wouldn't even know really. I guess to be terrified
you
of
wouldn't
it.
know it's happening to yourself.
Yeah.
So then, of course, when someone points it out to you, you know, you're going to argue and fight it. But
Mhm.
Yeah.
I didn't know we
The
were getting so
denial.
deep, guys.
The denial and everything. Well, Tyler's books are deep, man. You got to.
I know. I mean, we just this is like the deepest we ever got. I feel like I should be like whispering, talking about it, man.
Just,
I think you should.
On your...
Yeah, little ASMR. Yeah,
yeah.
So, do you think Almost Ruth is your best work? Because I said it's your best. I know Ross Jeffrey said it's your best. I don't know about what Brad thinks. What do you think about Almost Ruth? Do you think it's your best?
I like Dark Side of the Room, but I did like almost. I think I'm gonna like Almost Ruth more.
Do you think it's your best, Tyler? Then, or are you? Your best hasn't come yet.
That's like asking
to
him to pick his. That's like asking to pick your favorite child. Like, which one do you like more than the other one?
Yeah. Okay. The way
Put him on the spot, Jay.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't, Jay.
He's cussing me under his breath right now.
The way I see it is each book was the best I could do at the time. I brought the best that I could in that moment, and it's based on all the circumstances surrounding. Like Criterium came quick. Criterium, to me, it has an energy to it. It just moves. The Dark Side of the Room came pretty easily as well. Almost Ruth was really difficult to write.
Okay.
So I struggled with it. I stopped and started multiple times. I thought, this is an absolute failure. I'm not going to be able to release it.
Mm-hmm.
But I kept going because I had so much written already and I needed to know how it ended for me.
Yeah.
So I couldn't see it clearly. So, and now it's out, and I sent it to some beta readers, and truly the beta readers really help me see it, because I'm so close to it that when I let go of it, I don't know what it is. I need someone else to read it and tell me what it is, to have a reaction to it. And then I can, okay. It deserves to exist. I wasn't sure.
Do you think it was harder go ahead. I don't want to interrupt. Sorry.
No. My thought trailed off anyway.
I was going to say, do you think Almost Ruth was hard for you to write because it is longer than novella length, or was it just sort of just the story in general, or you don't really know what it was?
Boy, that is a good question though. So Criterium was the first novella that I ever wrote, but I wrote, trying to think, like 7 novels before that.
Okay.
One of which was like 800 pages long. So it was a monster. So it wasn't the length that was difficult. In fact, writing a novella, I think writing Criterium was harder to be concise, because I tend to overwrite and then cut. I think it was circumstantial. I think there was a lot going on. It was a crazy time, crazy year. Work was busy. There's family stuff going on. I just felt emotionally spent, and then I would sit down and write and expend myself even further emotionally.
Yeah.
But but it was useful. I think that that to me is a way of working through it and processing it. I'm sure some people like throw on a TV show that's comforting and check out and forget whatever's going on. For me, I write it out, and that's my way of like getting it out and exhausting my emotional connection to certain things.
So you said you have other books before Criterium. Are they under Tyler Jones, or is it under a different name?
We're never going to see those.
We're forget about those.
He never released them.
No.
That's what it is. He never released them.
Yeah. They were all 5 out of 7 were terrible.
Those are your practice novels then, right?
They really were. Yeah, they were me learning how to tell a story.
But now you go back and fix them and
Redo
finish
them,
them.
yeah. I'm curious what the 800-page one was.
Yeah.
The 800-page one. Okay, that's number 6. Number 7, I do believe in. I think it's a good book, and I'm working on some things to try and get that one out into the world sooner than later. Number 6. So that was the 800-page one, and it was about a young rock and roll band on tour, and their lead singer has terrible stage fright, and the band didn't realize it because they'd never played shows live before getting signed to a record label and making an album. They like just played in the garage. But once they're out on tour, they realize, oh my gosh, this guy, like, he cannot face the crowd. And it gets kind of weird from there because they get connected with this shadowy organization that gives him an experimental medication to help him face his fears.
Okay.
But it doesn't work as planned. And he may or may not become a cult leader. I don't know.
Just throwing that in there.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Yowzers.
But you know, it was really
I'll read
cool
it.
about that one. Which was really cool. It makes me want to revisit that one. Is I think the idea is good. I think it's cool, a cool story. But I thought I've read some books about bands, and every time you read about it like a fictional band, you have to imagine what they sound like.
Right.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't want to do that. I don't want to waste pages trying to describe their sound. So I wrote and recorded demos of all their songs. So I wrote their songs.
So you gotta, this needs released. I mean, you gotta release like a CD with
The
book.
CD along with it.
Yeah.
Digital download.
Well, that's the original intention was that. So every song mentioned in that book is a real song that exists that I've recorded. And I was thinking, I don't know if it's possible to have like an ebook where you could have the song title highlighted, like some kind of hyperlink to where as you're reading, you could just hit it and listen to it as you're reading. So I don't have to waste time describing. And when writers describe music, like they use these really hyperbolic terms to describe, like read
You
music
gotta look
reviews.
into that. That's just crazy.
Like if you read the review of an album, like the language that a reviewer uses is just hysterical.
Right.
It's like that's what you got from the music. Like we're talking about a rock and roll album, and you're describing it like in these just
they got these
cosmic
$10 words.
terms.
Yeah, they got these like these over the top $10 words. And you're like, dude, I just want to know if it rocks or not. Is it as good? Is it as good as the last one? Is it better? Let me know. Is it worse? Is there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I got that. I think I was reading. We sold our Grady Hendrix. Yeah. We sold our soul. Is that what the one with the rock band? I think that's what it was. And I remember he tried to kind of explain the sound of the band, and I think I was supposed to be picturing Black Sabbath, but it didn't come across that way, you know. So it was a good book overall. But I do like those kind of stories with the band in it, because I mean I'm a music guy, so I love music. So I love when, but you could tell sometimes when someone did their research and when someone didn't. You know, it just some of the terminology and the way it comes across. So yeah, but you need to work on that. You need to find out about that and release that. I'd get that in a second.
Someday. And I hope that I could do it before someone else does it, because as far as I know, it hasn't been done.
Well,
copyright it right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I know. I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, we can.
That was
part
part of what excited me about it. Is it seems like everything's been done, but that was something that at least I haven't seen, where you have this multimedia book in music, and the music is like intricate part of the book in the story.
It's not just something tacked on at the end for the sake of it. It's actually part of the story.
Yep.
That sounds really. I like the immersion with that. That's really cool.
what that would really work with Blackheart Boys Choir.
Yeah. Curtis Lawson.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we had him on as a guest. It's Friday, guys. But yeah, wouldn't that be awesome? Like to hit something on there and hear the choir sing,
because they're doing all the classical music.
Yes.
And stuff. Yeah.
Oh, see, you got to
do this,
that
Tyler.
real quick.
You got to do it right now. So, because I don't remember if you were on with Nikki and said it, or if you were on with Ross when you said it. But you said you can always tell if an author, when they're talking about music, if they're a musician themselves or if they've done a bunch of research for it. I think it was you talking about that. So with you, because you said you've been in bands and stuff, so that would all come naturally to you instead of just sort of using music words that might not work or might not make sense for what it is.
Yeah, and I don't fault anybody. Like, I've never read a book and thought, well, I can't finish this because of how they're describing the music. It's more.
Well, he's not out loud.
It's hard to describe a sound. It's hard to describe a melody.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do it very well. So it just seemed better or more succinct anyway to give them the melody. Here's what it is. Now I don't have to talk about it. You decide what it sounds like.
I think some of that. How can I put this without hurting people's feelings? Like I said, I'm a music guy. You seem like you're a music guy. We have our favorite bands, but we can't always put into words what that band does for us. And it's almost like in some books that have a band, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to put into words what their favorite band does for them in a descriptive way to keep the reader involved. And it sometimes doesn't come across too well because like my favorite band of all time is Pearl Jam. And I set my wife crazy because as much as because I have every live show ever.
And there's like 800 of them.
Yes. And she makes
bootlegs.
And she makes comments because if we're listening to something in the car, I want to finish it, or if she turns it down, I'm like, you can't do that during a solo or whatever. She says, these are her words. Her words are, don't you have like 37 different versions of that at the house? And I'm like, yes, but this one is different. Okay. So when I read about a band in like a book or something, like I know that the writer's trying to get that across, and get their feeling across, but I can get my feeling across to her on why that one is different. So I can see how hard it would be to kind of write a band the proper way in a book. Yeah. But if you have the sound with the book, play it, then that's a whole new world. So so I just totally got excited about that. So sorry.
Well, it's something that people will always disagree on is what something sounds like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of an example, but maybe I don't need to give one. But you know exactly what I mean.
I just totally went off in a different direction, but I know I know what it is.
Jay's super excited about this book, Tyler. You need to put.
I know. Yeah. I'm gonna bug you every day until it's ready to go.
Well, I'm just thinking I could play you guys a band that neither of you have ever heard of, maybe that I'm a fan of, and each of you would describe it differently, and you would compare it to some band that you are familiar with,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it may not be correct, but it's not incorrect. But that means it's just this abstract thing. Then it's non-specific.
Yeah.
So how do you describe that?
It's more of a feeling than something you can put into words.
Chad, you're not wrong, buddy. Honestly, yeah.
Yeah, so. Like what does the color yellow smell like?
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know.
So in your music, do you play or do you sing or what do you do with music?
Both. Yeah.
Both?
I used to play in bands. Now I just make things for me. I had to make a choice at some point. When you've got a busy life, it becomes, I had to decide what's more important to me, writing or music. I don't have time to devote to both. And I could be maybe sort of good at both or really devote myself to one and try and be as good as I can. And I just lost a headphone. Sorry, hold on. I messed something up here when I dropped my headphone.
Oh, you're okay. This is the most professional podcast, so it's okay.
We still got you. If you can hear us, you're good.
Okay. Yeah.
Works for
what was I
professionals
talking
here,
about?
Tyler. So
Yeah.
love of writing or choosing writing over music, and not wanting to do both.
Right. Yeah. So I just decided that that writing is what I need to do. It's what I love to do. I love music still, and I'll occasionally play and write songs, and I'm constantly thinking of melodies and ideas, and I just don't do it the way I used to. Like I would write songs like daily. I would have multiple ideas. It's hard to manage. It's hard to keep track of.
So it sounds like you could take one of your books, turn it into a movie, and you could do the soundtrack for it. So go ahead and get on that.
Yeah,
too.
I would love to do a score someday. Yeah, I think that would be amazing.
Are there recordings of your band days floating around anywhere?
Next question.
Next question.
Hey, we asked that to Kev Harrison. He was like, yeah, and he told us where we could find him.
He had long hair, like metal on his videos. Like, oh,
did he really?
You should put together you should get like a super group of writers who also are in bands.
Get Chad and Kev and Tyler,
Josh Mallerman.
Yeah, get everybody together. Just do a super group of readers and writers, or I don't know what. Think of it.
I like that you have the nerve to call it a super group.
Super group of writers try to be a band
who are playing music.
It'll be super something.
Give it a shot. And then at the concerts, you can sell your books. Instead of selling T-shirts and stuff and bumper stickers, you guys can have your books up.
Instead of throwing your guitar picks in the crowd, you toss some books in the crowd.
Yeah.
You guys could be onto something. Just knocking people out left and right.
Just that big 800-page one. Just throwing that into the crowd.
Yeah.
It's not a phone book. Oh, nice.
Was there something specifically about writing books that you not necessarily loved more, but that you wanted to pursue that over the music stuff? Was it just a more creative outlet for you, or just something kind of different than what you'd been doing?
No, I've always wanted to write, and I've always written. Just it needed focus. I dreamt of writing a novel for years and years before I actually wrote one, and it's just it's a different art form. It activates a different part of my brain. Striper used to.
Really?
Wow. Were those books Bibles?
I was going to say, I was curious. Do people throw them back?
Yeah. No, but when they got hit with one, the demons left.
I've exercised my demons.
Yeah. Yeah, and so writing it it's something, I don't know how else to say it. I needed to do it. I need to write. Music, as much as I love it, I can set it aside and be okay. But if I don't write for a couple days, I get really antsy, and I need to. I need to do it. I don't know how else to.
It's just that outlet for you.
Yeah. Chad is confirmed.
I'm wondering if we can find videos of that on YouTube somewhere.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
As soon as we're done, I'm searching it.
So with your new book that's coming out, your short story collection, how long have you been working on that one? And what's it called again? Burn the Plans, is that correct?
Burn the Plans, yeah.
Burn the Plans.
Okay. So the story behind Burn the Plans is kind of interesting to me. Maybe it'll be interesting to someone else. I had the privilege of being in a writing workshop with Chuck Palahniuk for about 2 years.
That's my next question. So good segue there.
Yeah, I knew that. I read your mind.
I figured you did. Yeah.
Yeah, it's telekinesis. So I was able to be in this workshop with a wonderfully gifted group of writers, and the whole point, we were there to learn, to write stories, to learn, to I've talked about this before, but I'll mention it again. Chuck wrote a book called Consider This, and it's all about writing. And it's one of the best books on writing I think anyone can read. And all of the wisdom that's in there is what he was teaching us. So as he was teaching in the workshop, he was writing Consider This simultaneously. So it was this process. So in that workshop, I would write short stories, bring them in, get feedback from the group, get feedback from Chuck, and then I'd edit the stories, and I tried to send them out to anthologies or open calls, magazines, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them got published, some of them got on the No Sleep podcast, but I still had a ton that hadn't been picked up or I hadn't sent out, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with them. So I wrote them over the course of about 2 years, and let's see, I had a couple stories published with Cemetery Gates in a couple of anthologies, and they reached out and asked if I had more that were unpublished and if I'd be interested in putting together a collection. And I hadn't really considered it until I put them all together. Like I realized, wow, I've got quite a few. And once I put them all in one, like they existed separately, a story, these separate files. And once they were all in one volume, one file, and I went through them, I realized, wow, there seemed to be a theme here, maybe, or they flow together, kind of like an album.
Yeah.
You can have slow songs, fast songs, different tempos, but they all seem to work together as a cohesive whole. And that's what the collection was like. The period of time in which I wrote those stories, they just seem to work together really well. And so now they are collected in what is officially known as Burn the Plans.
Nice.
That's cool. It's through Cemetery Gates Media because they have a lot of anthologies themselves. And you've had stories in some of their anthologies. So, I mean, it's fitting that your short story collection would be through them because they probably already have some of them. So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And they're entering into this new phase of their publishing. So they've done primarily anthologies up until this last year, and then they're moving into releasing works by single authors. They did Ross Jeffers' Only the Stains Remain, and Jen McCarthy's book Sometimes We're Cruel.
Do they do Jim and Moore's 6 Rooms? Was that them?
I believe so.
Yep, 6 Rooms, and then I think they're putting out a few novellas from Glenn Kirsch as well. So yeah, they're kind of moving into this new phase. So it's really cool to be a part of that.
So all of these short stories in Burn the Plans, these have already been written from the past.
Yeah.
And are any new ones in there? Or?
Yeah. So a few of them have been published. I think 5 or 6 of them have been published, and there's 15 stories total.
Okay.
So 9. I just lost on the math.
The math.
8 or 9 of them.
More of them are new than read.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you write these while you were writing Almost Ruth, or was Ruth already done and you wrote a bunch of new short stories?
Most of these were all written before Ruth.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually finishing up one now. I was going to so I have a story called Who Built the Moon included in the what's it called? Oh my gosh, Midnight from Beyond the Stars, the anthology from Silver Shamrock.
Right.
And I was going to include that story in Burn the Plans, but it got accepted. Yeah, that one. Yep. So that story got accepted in that anthology, and so then I pulled it from Burn the Plans, and so I'm writing a new one now to replace that one. So one of them will be brand spanking new.
Cool. How long did it I don't know if we answered this. How long did it take you to write Ruth? Like total from beginning to end? Was it like a year or so?
No. From beginning to end, I think the first draft was maybe 5 months.
Okay, so some of these short stories in Burn the Plans, you had them written before Ruth, so they've just been waiting.
Almost all of them, yeah.
Waiting in the wings just to be exposed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, another one. Sorry, I'm all over the place. It's Friday night. What do you expect? But going back to the writing class with Chuck Palahniuk, was that before or after Burnt Tongues? Because I know didn't he write the foreword or the intro to Burnt Tongues, and you had a story in that, correct?
Yeah. So all those stories were ones that he had picked. Yeah, and he edited that anthology along with a couple other guys
From the class, or
no, this was actually much earlier. So
okay.
he used to have a writing. So you know the website Lit Reactor?
Right. Yeah.
Lit Reactor used to be his website. And his webmaster, the guy who ran his site, eventually became a film director. His name's Dennis Widmeyer. He directed Starry Eyes and the newest version of Pet Sematary.
Okay.
So he ran the site, and they had this online writers workshop where you would critique each other's work, and there were like, I think, a couple thousand people involved in that. And so this was back in like 2009, 2010, when that all first came together. So yeah, this Burnt Tongues was a long time ago. So this was completely separate from that.
So I had thousands of people critiquing everybody's work.
Yeah, it was an interesting system. So like if the three of us were in this workshop, and say, Jay, you wanted to submit something, you would have to earn points to submit your work by critiquing the work of other people.
Oh, okay.
So every time you had to participate.
You had to give in as much as you're getting. So
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So it kept people engaged.
Right.
And then Chuck had decided, well, let's do like a contest. Let's pick the best of the best. And the whole community would vote and upvote stories that they felt were best. And whichever ones rose from the top, he would select from those. And that became Burnt Tongues.
I mean, that's a good concept because you'll get a different outlook on what people are looking for in your stories, which may be totally different than what you're doing. So if you're out there critiquing 20 different ones and 20 people do critique yours, you're not going to see the same thing. So that's good to see for the future writings, how you can attack those areas. I like the concept.
It's a good broad spectrum of feedback from different people.
Yeah, it can be complicated in the sense that
it can be intimidating too.
Yeah, and the fact that when you've got that many people that can comment on a story, it becomes difficult to hang on to any particular critique, because when you have your work critiqued, you want that criticism to be constructive and you want it to help. So I think a smaller group is better, because what may work for most people, you're going to have a certain percentage that is not going to work for, and then they'll start attacking the things that other people think work. And then at the end of it, you're not sure if any of it works, because every aspect has been critiqued.
Yeah.
Whereas like in the in-person workshop with Chuck, we'd have anywhere between 10 and 15 people. So you get an immediate feedback reaction as you're reading the story in person. I like that much better, because if you write a scene that's scary, you can look up and see how engaged everyone is. You can hear gasps. You can hear laughs if you write something funny. And then people can go back and forth. Like if someone says, I don't think that thing worked very well, other people can chime in and say, yeah, I felt the same way. But then they all agree that maybe this other part worked. So then you walk away knowing, okay, this specific area I need to improve on.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do something similar to that here on Paper Cuts. When usually the guest is reading something, you can usually see me over here reacting.
Now I'm bummed I decided not to read.
Grab something real quick. We could do it.
Daniel's got a hard-hitting question here for you. He wants to know why Hazard's origin story was cut from Burn the Plans.
So Dan Frazier is a good friend of mine, and he was in the workshop with me and Chuck. So I've been telling him he needs to put together a short story collection, because he's got tons of wonderful stories. If he's one of the only writers I've read where I've thought, if you like Chuck Palahniuk's style, it's not like an exact copy. That's not what I mean, but it's the closest that I've seen anyone do original stories where they capture that spirit, that sort of anarchic spirit, there's a lot of writers who like will try and copy his style to a T, but
Yeah.
Dan is more like inspired by it and has made his own thing. In fact, he's got a story out there on Amazon right now called Natural Selection. It's well worth a read. You get a sense of his style, and maybe more people will bug him to put together a collection. And so in answer to his question, Hazard is a drug dealer in Criterium. And he's a unique character, and he became sort of a legend in the workshop. So people just loved this character. I read the first version of Criterium in workshop. It was originally a short story before I turned it into a novella, and people just latched on to Hazard. So he would start popping up in other people's stories and sort of like homage, and it was so great. I loved it. He must have popped up in like 8 or 9 different stories, to the point where I would be looking for, is Hazard going to be in this?
It's like the Hazard universe.
It was usually a passing reference, but it was awesome.
And that was your critique. Well, that was pretty good, but you didn't mention Hazard, so I got
exactly.
Yeah, right. Just make an anthology of Hazard.
Of a Hazard.
Shadowy figure in the background.
It sounds like you needed to write another novella aside to Criterium all about Hazard then.
Hazard is your Randall Flagg.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, it was, maybe. In fact, Jeremy Robert Johnson, in his introduction to Criterium, and he didn't know any of this. He actually wrote, he mentioned Hazard and said that he should have his own book.
Daniel says
like
yes.
That,
so
yeah, that Hazard just lives on. I don't know. Maybe I'm not going to say no.
So your next book is the music book, and then after that it's Hazard book, is what it sounds like is going to happen. What do you think? What do you think it was about that particular character that everyone sort of latched onto? Do you have any idea why everyone sort of championed him sort of in that class? I don't know if championed is the right word, but
yeah, that's a great question, Brad. I do. So in writing Hazard, so keep in mind, he's a drug dealer.
Mm-hmm.
I made a conscious effort to not write him like a stereotypical drug dealer.
Okay.
Everything that we think of when we think of a drug dealer, I did the exact opposite with this guy. So he dresses in suits, but he's agoraphobic. He doesn't leave his house, or he lives in an apartment, but he lives in a really crappy, run-down apartment complex in Portland. But he's made his apartment really nice, so it has like hardwood floors and nice bookshelves, and he's obsessed with old films.
Okay.
Like anything made before 1980, preferably black and white, and he will have a black and white film playing on his massive screen constantly, and he speaks like he's in an old movie, and he has this really unique system of categorizing his drugs, and he doesn't sell anything that isn't made by a pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
So everything he sells is a pill of some kind that's made legally.
Yeah.
Which was, I guess, in a way, too, a brief comment on the pharmaceutical industry at large. We focus so much on illegal drugs that we neglect the fact that, like,
people get
there is
Oxycontin and all that stuff.
Oh my gosh, there's a fentanyl crisis. I mean, there were more overdose deaths in 2020 than there were in like the previous 10 years combined, or something like that. I mean, the number was astronomical, and that was all from a drug that is prescribed to people. Like, so this whole war on drugs that we've been fighting for decades is failing to massive corporations that are making billions of dollars every year off, selling this, prescribing the same things.
Right. I mean, it's
just in a different form.
Yeah, we just got deep again, guys. This is...
but Hazard also justifies himself because he has connections to where he gets all this stuff, but he also sells blood pressure medication to people who need it for cheaper than they could get at farms. So he
Oh,
sees
he's-
himself as
oh,
doing a
nice.
service as well.
He's sounds kind of almost like a Robin Hood type character in a way, a little bit.
Yeah.
You
Or
don't
he's
want to.
just
You don't.
trying
Go,
to like balance his conscience.
you don't
There
want to
you
go
go.
too much into detail about the drug part because then people start getting suspicious, Tyler. So just kind of stay on the surface a little bit with it.
Yeah.
Don't go
So I
too
hear
into
these
it.
things. I read an article.
Yeah, allegedly, yeah. So, I wanted to bring up. Did I see this correctly, or am I totally off? You do a podcast, or you're part of one on the side, or
You're way off, Jay.
you've interviewed people before for a
Oh,
project.
yeah,
you did.
yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. I was going to get there eventually.
I should have just let you keep going.
Yeah, I know.
Just guessing.
Yeah, but
Just keep shaking your
I
head
can
no.
think myself. Yeah, I was doing
You
pretty good
talk
with
to
it.
people sometimes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you talked.
Yeah.
You left your house.
Yeah.
Was it Lit Reactor you did those articles on, or was that another site?
Yeah, I've done some articles. I've had an interview with Stephen Graham Jones in Dark Moon Digest. I've done some
So if
interviews.
you can just call him up to get him on our show, that'd be great. No, I'm just
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch this. I'm like, no way.
yeah.
Let me send you my PayPal real quick, and then
Okay.
Yeah,
Just let me know
I've
after
done-
the show how much, and
yeah. I've done a few for Cemetery Dance, and then I have a column. So the interviews that I've done for Cemetery Dance tend to be just interviews with writers that I admire. Like I interviewed Joe Lansdale there, Michael Marshall Smith, Max Booth. But I do have a column. It's been dormant for a while at Lit Reactor called Blood in the Gears, and that's where I get it into craft with writers. So it's where we get to nerd out a little bit, where I get to ask like really specific questions about the process that I hope will be interesting and enlightening to other writers, but we don't generally talk about other things other than their process.
I got you. Okay.
with the interviews, are they like done via Skype, or is it just like texting back and forth, or like the interview
I've done
ones?
it multiple. Yeah, I've done it multiple ways. Stephen Graham Jones and I talked on the phone, and Paul Tremblay and I spoke on the phone, and then a lot of some writers prefer actually to do email.
Okay.
Because they prefer a list of questions,
So they can
and I
just
think
type
it
out
just
like
has.
essay.
Yeah, and I think it's some prefer that just because you can control and edit.
Right.
You don't have to backtrack, and I've always preferred the in person. So like when I interviewed Joe Lansdale, that was in person. We had coffee in downtown Portland, and it was just a blast talking to him. I have an interview that with Chuck Palahniuk actually coming in the next issue of Cemetery Dance magazine. It's been on hold because with COVID there were some printer issues and things like that, so everything just got backed up. But it was really cool because it's a career retrospective, which he's never done before.
That's
so I got
cool.
to sit down with him for a couple hours and hand him each one of his books and say, let's talk about this, when where you were at in your life, what was going on, and we went through each one of his books. So it could have been a much longer article. I prefer in person, but it is hard to transcribe all that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you imagine like our conversation here and then having to type that up.
Yeah, it would be like 3 sentences if I did it.
Well, I would add tons of stuff to what Jay said. I would just
yeah.
add all kinds of things he didn't say.
I did that enough myself.
Yeah.
The in-person ones, there's something about them that's more organic, more conversational and stuff, instead of just bullet point questions. You can say something and then I wasn't planning to say anything, but I play off what you say, and just conversational. I like that better. That's why we do it like this instead of.
I mean, that's what we attempt to do.
Yeah, whether we succeed or not is a completely different.
Yeah, I mean, we usually hope that the guest brings something, and then we can feed off that. So that's what we try.
I forgot to mention. Yes, you're right, and I interviewed Max Booth.
He's hilarious.
He really is. Yeah, he's got a gift. Yeah, not very many people have that.
It's quick.
Not just clever, but also funny, genuinely funny. and a great writer too. Like he moves from hilarious to horrifying so fast, and it's so sneaky. Like he does that better than almost anyone. And I wanted to try and preserve some of that in our interview. So we actually did it via a text, a chat.
Okay.
Which was cool, because then we could go back and forth and have some of that conversational stuff going on.
And horror and comedy go so well together, because you're just playing off these completely opposite emotions, and then at the drop of a hat, it's the complete opposite of what's going on. That always meshes so well together.
I know, it's something I wish I was better at. I've always loved it and appreciated that. I love horror that's fun, or that balances that line, and it's not something that I'm very good at. I wish I was better at it. But yeah, there are some people. Joe Lansdale does that really well too.
Yeah, Joe's stuff is fun. His Hap and Leonard books are hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever laughed out loud reading a book until I read Joe's stuff. Yeah, he's a treasure, legend.
Have you attempted to do the comedy and horror stuff mixed together, like at all, and like cut it out or anything, or have you just not gone there yet?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked that. So there was actually
that was book number 4 in the novel.
in the previous books.
Yeah.
There's a couple stories in Burn the Plans that I think go that direction. Okay. There's one in particular called Boo, about a young boy who thinks that ghosts are in his house, and he tries to get proof of it, that I think is funny. Or I specifically wrote it to try and be a little bit lighter. And there's another one that'll be in there that's currently untitled that, starts out that way, that I hope is a little disarming at the beginning, and then slowly gets more and more horrifying as it goes on. Yeah, Burn the Plans is interesting because it was an opportunity in those short stories for me to try different voices and different experiments.
Yeah,
like I really, really tried to write in voices that were not my own, and I, like there's one story that's told entirely through voicemail messages. So I got to play with some different formats as well. Not as a gimmick either. Like I don't mind gimmicks, but it's not my thing in particular. But if a story idea comes to me and it seems like a certain way of telling it is the best way, then I'm all for trying it. And I couldn't see another way to tell this story except through voicemail messages.
That's interesting. I mean, I like when it's not overdone, but I do like a story that like that, or through emails, or through text, or whatever it may be, newspaper articles or whatever, just to mix it up a bit, just to break up the monotony a little bit of it, and as long as it's not overdone,
right?
So that's pretty interesting.
And it's using a nonfiction device too that we're all familiar with. Stephen King did that in Carrie a lot. He used newspaper articles,
right? Yeah, with the court documents, and
and it adds some texture to it as well. So it's not just prose the whole way through, but it also lends some realism to it as well.
Like I liked what you did that just a little bit in Dark Side with the newspaper article, like at the beginning and stuff. It's just a different way to tell the story that feels organic and feels like real, like text message or newspaper article and stuff like that.
Yeah, it can be a cool way to get information across without that would seem maybe heavy-handed if you wrote it. Like Dark Side of the Room is a good example. The information that we get in that first news clipping, then we leave that behind and go into the story, but it's happening.
It's like an info dump, but it's not, and it doesn't feel like an info dump doing it that way. If that makes sense.
Yes.
And I think if you're going to do a story like that, use a different formatting like that, whatever it may be, text message, emails, you have to know when to end it so it doesn't go on too long. Like, for instance, Eric LaRocca's big book this past summer, it's an epistolatory of just instant messenger and emails, and it's short, so because he knew when to stop. It's 80 pages or something like that. I mean, I think if it would have went
80, 90 pages.
Yeah, if it would have went on and on and on, you probably would have got exhausted with the way it was. But like, he knew when to end it, so it didn't become overkill. So I think that's
that's a
key too.
perfect
If you're gonna,
example.
if you're going to mess around with formatting, know when to end it properly. So
It's probably
you
even
have to-
shorter than that because of the way it's formatted makes
Right.
it longer pages. So it's probably like maybe 60, 70 pages.
Right.
If it was actual
Yeah.
like normal.
Which is so wise because he clearly understood the limitations of that experiment.
Yeah.
And you have to know the limitations of it, that it can be exhausting. And there's only so much you can do with any experiment like that. Like no one would want to read an entire book written like that.
Right, like a
I'm sure
350
maybe
page
somebody
novel.
would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's just so much information you couldn't get. Yeah.
You're
Chad was kind enough. He read Burn the Plans and offered a quote about it. And yeah, he after reading Boo, the story about the kid hunting for ghosts, he sent me a message and asked, "Is what I think going on?" Like, I don't know. What do you think's going on?
and you're talking about
he was right. He was right.
It was right.
Yeah.
What you experimenting with the short stories, that's a perfect avenue to experiment with maybe things you're not as comfortable with, like comedy and stuff, because it's not as a big a time investment for you, and same for the readers. Like, not all short stories work for everybody, so it's only 10, 15 pages instead of sinking 200, 300 pages, all the hours into a bigger book. It gives you time to explore on your side, and then if it doesn't work for the reader, they haven't lost that much time either as an investment just reading it.
Yeah. And writing all of these in workshop it gave me the freedom to really try these things because of that immediate feedback loop. Is this experiment working? Rather than just doing an experiment and then putting it out into the world, I was able to get that feedback. And there's a story in Burn the Plans. Technically, it's a novelette. And it's in two parts. It's called Trigger. And the first part is going to be published in a Flame Tree anthology that comes out actually this month. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot. It's called Chilling. Wow. It's called Chilling Crime Stories.
Okay.
The anthology is, wow, I need to look at the date on that.
It was out yesterday, Tyler. Come on now.
Well, it publishes in the UK first, and then it comes out in the US in I think February. But so it's this 2-part story, and the first part is in that anthology. The complete story is going to be in Burn the Plans, and it's written in first person from the perspective of like a 17-year-old boy, and he's a country kid. He lives in the country, single dad. It's just him and his younger brother and his dad. And this character just came fully to life. And I heard his voice in my head and I knew how he spoke. And to try and translate that into writing, the experiment was, don't sound like a writer. Sound like a person telling a story. And the way that people talk is messy. We drop words. And if you've got somebody who, some country kid, they're going to use terms and phrases that I don't use. And really leaning into that and telling the story from his perspective. I mean, this story just came to life in a way that I look over it and have zero memory of writing it. None. It sounds nothing like me.
That sounds awesome. Because if you think about it, with it being in first person, I mean, I think that's the key, because then the whole thing is the language she uses and not a third person point of view where it changes throughout. You know what I mean? So it might be one paragraph of that language, but then the rest might be, normal. And then he changes the language again. So yeah, that's pretty interesting concept too.
Yeah. And thank you, Chad, for the kind words. Yeah, he was really supportive of that story. It seemed, and it's funny, after writing that, it seemed like when I sent the book to Chad, I thought, I bet Trigger is going to be the one he likes the most, knowing Chad's work. So reading the book, there's a book written by David Mitchell called Black Swan Green, which is, he's a pretty experimental. I don't even know if I like that word. He's just a really unique writer, but this book is written from the perspective of a teenage boy, and it's really quirky and unique. I think the character could be described as probably on the autism spectrum, and he leans so deeply into that voice that it feels authentic. And I don't think there's anything better. It's when somebody tries to like, I'm gonna have a voice a little bit, but I'm also want you to know that I'm a writer.
Yeah.
And that's when it fails. It's when you're like, I don't care what you think of my writing. I want you to feel like this is a person telling you the story. That's when it really comes alive. And I tried to take a page from David Mitchell's book and just really like just throw out all the rules and just lean into the voice of it. And it was fun. It was a blast to write. And so much so that I'm like 90% sure that Trigger will be the very first part of a novel.
Okay.
Nice. I'm thinking of Stephen King's Dolores Claiborne's similar to that, where it's
perfect example.
Yeah. Just straight her. And then of course I
love that book.
I'm picturing Kathy Bates the whole time.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know.
Yeah, but that's another great example. Is he never says like you never get the sense that his desire to be seen as a writer overtakes the voice of Dolores.
Yeah, and there's not even any chapters in that book. It's just one solid piece.
Yeah,
there's no chapter breaks or anything.
Yep.
And I'm not a writer myself, but as an author, do you feel like I feel like dialogue would be the hardest thing to do and make it feel authentic without making it feel like you said, it's the writer doing it instead of, because the way people write and the way people talk is completely different.
Yeah.
Do you think dialogue is hard to do, or is it other things that are harder for you to nail down? Because you can tell in a book when it feels like someone wrote it as compared to it feels like these characters are actually having a conversation.
Yeah. Oh, man, you've got good questions for a Friday night.
Because you're talking about Trigger, it feels and Chad feels like that character's actually, the one speaking instead of, this is a book Tyler Jones wrote. If I'm making any sense at all.
No, you're making total sense. Yeah, I do think dialogue is hard. But I think all of it's hard. But so when I approach dialogue, I take the same approach that I did with Hazard. So we have this all these books and all these films that have told us what a drug dealer is. So I would need to do something different than that. And I think dialogue is the same way, or I approach it the same way, is there are things we expect characters to say that we've heard versions of those statements or those conversations even many, many times. So I do my best to try and think of I pause on dialogue probably more than I pause on a lot of other things and think, okay, what is the best way to say this? Here's my instinct is to write this sentence or this phrase because we know it. So I think about it a little bit longer and usually go with my second or third choice. So hopefully it doesn't feel as familiar. But sometimes there's only, a certain number of ways to say something.
Right.
Yeah.
I search for the unfamiliar.
Like a complaint that's common with dialogue is like it'll be a kid character, but when they talk, they feel like they're much older. Like you hear that complaint a lot. Like this character is supposed to be 13, but they talk like they're 30 years old. Like they're way more mature.
I think that's
in their dialogue.
I see that a lot actually. I think that's probably gotta be pretty hard.
Yeah. I think sometimes kid characters too get a little too harshly judged.
Because they are a lot smarter and more mature than a lot of, I guess if you're not a parent, you might not realize it, but having kids, you're like, okay, this kid is a lot smarter than if you don't have a parent deal with kids, you might not realize that.
Yeah, exactly. Like if I were to write down in dialogue some of the things that my kids have said, I don't think people would believe it. Like your kid did not use that word.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. You don't have to believe it. It's just, it is. So I think, I think some of those characters get a little bit harshly judged, and the kids are smart, man.
That word of the
there are
day, toilet
mature
paper pays
kids.
off. Right?
Right.
I've seen the opposite too. Like someone will be writing a 10-year-old, but on paper it feels like they're like really much like a 3-year-old. Like it just doesn't match up to what their I don't know, their smartness, their common sense would be. So you can kind of see it both ways. Like they either feel too old or they feel a lot younger than they should be. If that,
Yeah, it's kind of an overcompensation.
uh-huh.
I think I would prefer to err on the side of having a young character be too intelligent rather than not intelligent enough. Because I think that if you're writing it, I would love for somebody who's 13 or 14 to read a story that I've written that has a young character and see themselves in it. Like, yeah, that's a smart kid. I'm a smart kid.
The kid can be
for them to
smart.
like, that kid's dumb.
I mean, the kid can be smart with the big vocabulary. Just say that the parents read to the kid in the womb. You know, just
yeah. Played Mozart in the belly.
Go with that angle. Yeah. So
yeah.
We did all that with
kid characters are hard to do. I think it's definitely hard to pull off.
Yeah. And that's a hard one, but I feel like Stephen King nails not necessarily young kids, but just teenagers in general. I feel like he does some of the best nailing kids. I don't know why, because he's like 80 years old now, but he still nails those kid characters like to a T.
At the time, I mean, he was probably reflecting on what he said and what he did during that time. So,
yeah. And being a dad, I was talking to somebody the other day, a friend of mine, about have you guys ever seen the movie Frailty?
I think I have, yes.
Yeah,
with Matthew McConaughey and Bill Paxton. It was I think it was one of the only films that Bill Paxton directed. It was I believe it was the first one he directed. But there are two kid characters in there, and I was talking with a friend about how the movie, in my opinion, it only works because of the child actors. They are so good in that movie. And I saw it when it first came out in the theater, and I've only seen it maybe once since. But I remember thinking that even at the time, that even with child actors, they will overcompensate one way or the other often, and they can make or break a movie in which those characters are the center. And these kids just absolutely nail they feel real. They feel like real characters. And I always try to remember that when writing about kids, that how they're presented will make or break the story.
Mm-hmm. That's like with the It movies, the new ones and the old one. The kid section at the beginning is always better than the adult section, like because the kids are so much more compelling and entertaining than they are as adults for that particular story. Yeah, and believable.
Yeah, agreed.
How much does your area where you live figure into your writing? You're in Portland, correct? Mm-hmm. Do you usually try to work in your surroundings? Are your books like what Portland really is? And how true was Portlandia? I love that show.
I've never seen it.
You never watched
it?
Oh
no.
Okay.
I've yeah.
I wanted to know if they really filmed it there and everything, but go ahead. Back to your writing.
I think they did. I think it was filmed here, but I don't. Yeah, I never. I'm just gonna say it's dead accurate. It's exactly how it is.
It was kind of strange, but yeah.
Now Tyler's gonna watch
your writing. Right.
This is nothing like it.
Exactly. But as far as your writing, was Criterium? That was taking place in Portland, right? Or am I okay?
I know Dark Side does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're using what you know,
Ruth
basically.
in Oregon as well.
Yeah.
Or it is okay. I didn't know if you had
a version of Oregon. Yeah.
Version of Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely factors in. It's hard not to. It's such a unique city. It's more menacing now than it has been in the past. It's been changing over the last few years, and there's parts of it I don't really recognize anymore. It used to be a city that I loved to go downtown, and now I don't even want to be there. If you have the chance to read the novella Along the Shadow. It gives you a glimpse of Portland and downtown Portland, and maybe some of my feelings about it. But it's still a city I love, and it still influences my writing in the sense that it's the architecture, the streets, the stores and the shops, the rain. My gosh, the rain, the gray. It's kind of it can be oppressive, like especially this time of year. It's just this permanently gray city with just constantly falling rain, constant.
Yeah.
And it can be a little oppressive in that regard.
But
it's definitely there.
There was a lot in this one, the rain and the oppressive atmosphere outside and inside with her head and stuff. They played well with each other for that book.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So yeah, it's there, but it's not. It's not like in a really significant way.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Do you like setting your books in Maine? Or not Maine, in Portland.
I do.
I don't know why I'm saying Maine.
Tyler's got Portland. Stephen King's doing Maine.
Stephen King's at Maine.
Yeah.
I don't know where Maine came from, but
I'm not opposed to setting them anywhere. It's just when the story arrives, visually what I see are certain areas sometimes. Like I saw so clearly the neighborhood that Criterium took place in, and same thing with the Dark Side of the Room. And it wasn't a conscious decision. It was just, this is where the story takes place.
Yeah.
And so that's where I wrote it. So I'm not opposed to setting them elsewhere, but I there's a lot in Oregon as well. We've got the coast, we've got mountains, we've got rivers, lakes, cities, desert. We've got some of those beautiful desert. There is a Portland, Maine as well.
Chad's got my back.
Good point.
Chad saved you, Brad.
Chad saved me.
Chad saved Brad. Okay. I remember reading Criterium.
So
and
there's
I
a lot
remember
here.
the whole Portland connection, but reading it, like, not saying it's just like Columbus. I'm in Columbus, so not saying it's just like Columbus, but I got a feeling, that connection too with Criterium, with the description of the drug dealer's apartment and the surroundings, the streets and all. Like I was picturing parts of Columbus like that too. So I mean, the two cities might be similar in that. Right now it's just gray nonstop here too. You know, and a lot of, like today, just nonstop rain and all. So yeah, I was curious about that because I that was one of the reasons, Criterium connected with me too, because the setting felt like I was home, and I witnessed a lot of those cruddy streets, cruddy neighborhoods, and you knew which house was the drug dealer house, and usually the window was open in the wintertime and the curtain was flying out, and stuff like that. So it's making a connection there.
That's cool. Yeah, and I love that you're able to see your own area in it. I like that. In fact, I realized when I wrote Along the Shadow, the bonus novella to the Dark Side of the Room, it dawned on me that in both the Dark Side of the Room and Criterium, I set them in Portland, but I'd never really mentioned Portland landmarks. And I'm not sure if that was conscious or not. I think maybe it was, to allow someone to say, oh, this could be Columbus. But in Along the Shadow, I did purposely add some landmarks in the story, just to make it clear where I was. I think I needed to center myself on there's some events that happened that I needed to know where in the city they were taking place, and I couldn't really do that without mentioning some landmarks.
So Jay,
which you don't have in Columbus, Ohio.
You're in Columbus, Maine, right, Jay? Is that where you're at?
Columbus, Maine. Is that what it is?
Maine, yeah. like I live in Kentucky, and we don't ever have any books set here in Kentucky. So when there is one, I feel like I almost have a bias towards it. Like I like it even more just because it's set here. Like I loved Todd Keesling's Devil's Creek, and I don't know if it's because I love the story or if it actually took place in Kentucky is what made me like it so much. So having it set where it is, like having it set where you're at, or your stories, or having it set wherever. There's an extra layer of nostalgia is not right, but just feeling at home to a story set where you live.
I think that's why I loved Donald Ray Pollock's The Devil All the Time, because I mean most of it was Southern Ohio, but there were a few parts where they were in Columbus, and they named a few streets that are literally 5 minutes from where I am right now. You know, there's they mentioned Parsons Avenue. I'm like, I go up and down that all the time. Like,
there's just, I don't know what it is. Even in movies, like you see something like, oh, I've been there or I live close to that. There's just that connection with stories that makes it feel more real, I guess, maybe. Then you can have that personal connection with stuff like that.
I've always wanted to see the staircase from The Exorcist.
Oh, yeah.
You know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I've always wanted to see that in person.
That's in Boston, right? Is that where it's at? Massachusetts somewhere?
You know what? If you hadn't asked me that, I would have known.
I ruined it.
Yeah.
Chad will know. Chad will comment.
I think you might right. Chad, where is the Exorcist staircase?
We're asking people to chat now. Let's just
Yeah.
There we go.
Where is she from?
It up.
It's a Georgetown. Brennan probably knows. He's from.
Oh yeah. I think Brennan's right. I think it is Georgetown.
Here, I'll just look it up. Where is the
Brennan just told you. You're saying you don't trust Brennan?
I trust him, but that's actually I got where is the staircase, and one of the options is from The Exorcist. How cool is that?
Maybe it is DC, probably, right? Because that's where the book takes
Prospect
place.
Street and 36th Street. Doesn't say what. Georgetown. There we go. Yeah.
Georgetown.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Is it a subcon? Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking of the pictures people take when they visit of them, sprawled out on the stairs.
They're falling down.
I just want to have a picture of me like that.
That's your new author photo.
The funny thing is, people walk by, they don't know if they're posing or if they really fell. They just keep going.
Yeah. How many people have just been left there in agony?
Yeah. They're just taking a picture. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Is it a subconscious thing for you to set your stuff in Portland, you think? Or that's just what you've done so far necessarily?
I think it's subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think it's purposeful. It has to take place somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not even.
I didn't know you were I didn't know Brennan was the expert at Exorcist.
Brandon will never come on the show now, Jay, because of you.
Yeah. Jeez. I'm not even opposed to not saying where things take place as well. As a reader, I don't need to know.
Mm-hmm.
There's, again, like we were talking about the negative space. I think sometimes not knowing allows me to put it wherever I want. Because if it is somewhere specific, then I'm using I'm trying to picture something that I think exists.
Uh-huh.
Not that it's bad. It's just preference. I've just noticed that if I'm reading a book and it's very specific where it takes place, I'm putting a lot of time into trying to imagine this real place, and then get some anxiety about it. Well, what if I'm imagining it wrong? And then I want to look it up, but I've already conjured up an image of it. If I look up what these city streets look like, it's going to destroy what I think. But I mean, most books mention specific places, but all that to say, I like the negative space a lot. So yes, in my head, they take place in Portland, but I'd love for anyone to be able to think that it took place in their town or city.
So there you go, Brad.
In Columbus,
say, you could say it takes place in Kentucky, Brad, just to make you happy because you don't have any.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
What's your town? Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we start winding down a little bit, so we don't keep you the whole Friday night since Brad was late. Some of your biggest,
Jay.
Yeah, some of your biggest influences.
Chuck Palahniuk, obviously, Jay.
Yeah, number one probably.
Yeah, Chuck's been a huge influence. Oh gosh, I could go down a list. Don DeLillo, Paul Auster, David Mitchell, Joe Lansdale, Stephen Graham Jones, Josh Mallerman is a big one. Shirley Jackson. I could go on and on. Have you ever been
told by any other writers that you have influenced them? You can go ahead and say yes, even if you haven't. I didn't mean to put you in the spot, but I was just wondering if. Damn, he's never going to come back now, is he, Brad? I'm sorry.
No,
You're giving him all these hard
totally,
questions, Jay.
Yeah, no, that's a valid question, man. No, not that I'm aware of. No, and I'm fine with that. The fact that
maybe that came out wrong. I didn't mean it like.
No. I think I get the question. I like with the Burn the Plans cover reveal today. I had some quotes from some writers that I really admire, like John F.D. Taft and Haley Piper and Chad Lutzke. It really means a lot to me that a writer I respect would read my work and then have something nice to say about it. So that to me is
that was the angle I was going for. I meant I just
yeah.
I didn't mean you influence. You got it. You got it.
Yeah. That means a ton. Yeah, I think. Like in the world of music, it's the same way. If I remember playing live shows and we would tour with bands, and of course you want the crowd to be into it. But here's the thing: a crowd arrives at a show wanting to get into it.
Yeah,
they've paid money for the ticket. Maybe they know you, maybe they don't. Maybe they're there for a headliner and you're the opener. Whatever the situation, the crowd is like primed. There's that electricity in the room, and they want to be moved. So you can win them over. But what always meant the most to me is when another band, like say the headliner, if we were an opener, would go to the back of the crowd or on the side and watch our show, and they'd be moving along with it.
Yeah.
And they'd be digging what we were doing.
That.
Yeah. When you see the other musicians are into it, that's when you're like, okay, now we're like the crowd. I'm so glad they're into this, but the musicians are into it too. That's cool. So it means a lot to me, like on that level when writers,
when your peers are into it.
Yeah, like Brennan LaFaro, gave me a blurb for Almost Ruth, Ross Jeffrey, Eric LaRocca. It's just like all those people. Laurel Hightower read Criterium, Max Booth for Dark Side of the Room. Like the fact that any of these people would even be willing to read it and then having some nice things to say means a lot. Philip Fracassi, Jeremy Robert Johnson, all those guys.
Right. Yeah.
Do you reach out to authors for blurbs? Is that like an awkward thing if you do that? Because I know some other authors is like, it's kind of awkward to ask other people to write or take their time to read it and send me back blurbs. And
yeah,
is that
it's not awkward because I generally offer them money when I do it. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Jay didn't look sure there for a second.
He's sending out.
I was like, shoot, that's why it didn't work. Okay.
Yeah. It was at first. Yeah. But now, sometimes the answer is no. And it doesn't bother me at all. Like I'm not that fragile and I'm not easily offended. And I get it because I've had to turn down requests and I feel terrible every time, but sometimes there's just too much going on and I really feel terrible. And I hope that when I do that the person doesn't feel like I'm being a jerk, and I try to when I can. Sometimes it's just the timing is off,
Right. Yeah. Because you really want to read it because you don't want like just a fake blurb, right? I mean, you really do want to read it and get like a really emotional or legit blurb. So
because like Chad says every time, like he'll offer to read it, but he won't give a blurb unless he actually really likes it.
Yeah. Which is I think the right way to do it. There was some writer, man, I can't remember his name now. I'll have to look this up later, but the story goes that he was approached so often for blurbs that he started telling writers, and this was some guy like major published, who said, just write whatever it is you want me to say and just put my latest book, author of my latest book, so that it's promotion.
Yeah.
Like people would do it. So-and-so said, this is a work of genius.
Not saying that Stephen King does this, but he has so many blurbs. It's like, where does he find the time to read all this stuff and pump out 2 500-page books every year? And I feel like every other week he has a blurb on a book.
Yeah.
Because if you look at like
efficient with his time.
Yeah, if you look at like Bentley Little, he's used the same Stephen King blurb for 20 years now. So I mean I would too. So
Stephen King loved that particular book.
Yeah. True. Yeah. If you get a good blurb, you can just use it over and over again.
Reuse it over and over again.
All right,
That's
Tyler.
And
where's-
Brennan's right. The worst that happens is someone says no.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just like our show.
Everybody is. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
and
think
then
anyone said no yet. Crossed their fingers.
I think
knock on wood.
we expect a no, and then
Every
we're like,
time.
when they say yes, we're like,
Well, yeah. The worst that someone says is no. They don't often follow up no with a bunch of insults on top of it. It's just no. It can't do it. Huh?
wait, they're not supposed to. I gotta talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoops.
All right, Tyler. Where can everyone find you as we start wrapping things up here? You got you're on that Twitter machine, Instagram, all that stuff. You have a website.
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah. Websites. TylerJones.net, Twitter, Instagram at TJonesWriter. And that's it. That's all.
Is
I
your
got.
website updated? Because it says coming Christmas of 2014. Oh, I'm
Jay?
sorry, wrong one.
Jay does that every time.
No. Does it?
I
Is
change
that
the
a-
year.
is that a-
I change the year every now and then.
I think you caught Megan Lucas off guard. Like you really freaked her out that her website was out of date.
Yeah, under construction. Okay.
And there's your answer why people are saying no. But it's funny you ask because no, mine is not up to date. I was so busy trying to get the last four books out that I haven't, and then with Burn the Plan stuff that I haven't even updated to include the newest books on my website.
I've noticed that
I should do that.
I think writers sometimes focus more with Twitter and Instagram because I think that they probably get more foot traffic. It seems like this day and age with technology. I mean, websites are secondary now.
Yeah.
because you have YouTube and Twitter and other promotional ways to get your stuff out. Where it's like you have a website, yeah. What year is this? 2012. And it's more
That's a good
focused on-
point.
Yeah, so
I'm kind of old school in that way. I still prefer websites because I like if you want to find out what someone has written, like Twitter's the worst place to find that out.
Yeah.
Because you get like this whole thread of opinions and jokes and other people's works, which is great. But I like that one-stop shopping where I can click on, okay, books. Here's what you've written.
Yeah.
Got it. It's just for my brain, it's clear.
For you being mostly, self-pub, do you find it hard to promote yourself? And sort of the big sea of everyone promoting themselves as well, trying to get seen,
Yeah.
sort of.
It is. Yeah, it is. And I don't know the right way to do it. I'm not real clever with it.
Yeah.
And there's always that fear of you don't want to be annoying. But then on the other hand, it's like, well, I understand
books.
Yeah, check them out. I hope people read
Yeah,
them.
there's supposed to be some sort of etiquette on Twitter, but you don't know what it is until you cross it. So,
Yeah,
right.
That's another good point. And to me, it's like the whole point that I even got there in the first place was to let people know there were books. The books are all that matter to me.
Yeah.
Like I'm not very good with social media. I don't think I'm just not. Maybe because it's not something I'm particularly drawn to. But yeah, that's a hard one. And if you see someone else do something that appears to work for them, and then you try and replicate it, it might not work as well.
Right.
Yeah.
There are certain people that really do seem to have a knack for it, and I respect that enormously.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword of. There's all this toxic stuff on there, but you also want to get the word out about what you've got going on. There's that fine double-edged sword there, that walking that line of don't want to deal with all this stuff, but on the same side, I want to tell people about the books I've got going on.
Yeah, definitely. And that's pretty much all I'm going to do. Like if you go to my Twitter, you're not going to really find my thoughts on anything.
Yeah.
It's all other people's books, friends' books, and books I'm excited about, and my books. And that's pretty much it. That's all you're going to see. So if that's interesting, if you like books,
I was going to say it works. So you have Twitter, Instagram, and he's got a website. Tyler, we appreciate you stopping by. Of course, this has been a pleasure for us. Hopefully, somewhat of a pleasure for you.
It has. It has. Thank you.
It's been fun for everyone in the chat. Thanks so much for stopping by. Thanks for the questions. And that's going to do it. This is episode number 19, Brad. We haven't broken up yet.
Haven't broken up yet. It's
No,
next week,
okay.
though. We're breaking up next week, live on air.
It can happen.
Tune in.
So once
Episode
again,
20 is
yeah.
the end.
Exactly. That was the plan. So thanks to our special guest, Tyler Jones. And please pick up some of this work. Almost Ruth, maybe in my
Dark Side of the
top
Room.
books of the year. We'll find out soon. For my late
Right on.
partner over there, Brad Proctor.
It's not my fault.
My name is Jay. Till next time. See you guys. Stay safe.
See you guys. Love you, Jay.
Thanks,
Love
everyone.
Brad.